Self-defense legal information from Reddit or from Tom Grieve? We'll talk in just a moment. But first, we have a gun giveaway going on. It's happening right now. It's absolutely free, but it ends really soon. So click the link in the description down below to find out which new gun you could win. Tom, on Reddit, we have a 12-part deadly force in self-defense legality checklist. And wow. Okay, item 1. Didn't initiate altercation or contribute to bringing it about, ? That's the first most important thing on a deadly force. I'm just going to go through the whole list first.
Is this like a rank? For the record, I have not reviewed this. I'm hearing about this for the first time right now.
So if you went out to Reddit and you wanted to find out if it was legal or not to engage in self-defense, you'd find this legality checklist and you would walk away more confused than when you started. Item 1, didn't initiate the altercation or contribute to bringing it about, ?
So
go.
So that I think what they're talking about there is they're dealing with issues concerning provocation.
Right.
So for instance, if I went in to rob a liquor store and I've got a knife and the cashier pulls out a gun, I can't stab him in self-defense because I provoked that situation. So I think best case scenario, they're dealing with that preclusion issue of, well, okay, did you provoke the incident?
And that is a great, yet brief, more brief than I'm used to with you, explanation. And it would be wonderful to have such explanations on this checklist. So I'm going to go down the list and let you provide, to the best of your ability, the explanation for what these folks from Reddit, user-generated content, you get what you pay for. Number 2.
Our videos are free too, Kevin.
Oh boy. Yeah, but never mind. Okay. Number 2, reasonable fear of imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm, ? Are you in fear? I think that one is pretty much speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, different states, the scenes will vary, but more or less, are you in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm or immediate fear of death or great bodily harm, something like that. That seems to square up with, depending on where you are, what the laws say.
Evidence of fearing imminent danger, ? All of these end in a question mark. So I'm assuming the writer of this list is asking, is there evidence of fearing imminent danger? And if you have evidence, then we can check it off, and that's a good thing.
Yes, evidence, good.
Evidence,
more evidence, better. Yeah, I mean, look, we need to be able to establish the immediacy. The person who says, I'm going to kill you, but they're 100 yards away with a knife, that may not constitute an imminent danger at that moment. Now, as they're charging you at a certain point between that 100 yards out and personal contact distance, they're going to create, depending upon reactionary gap discussions and so forth, they're going to turn into that immediate or imminent reasonable fear of imminent death, great bodily harm.
Number 4 and number 5, and maybe even number 6. I'm at a loss, and I'm hoping that you will be stumped as well. Number 4, shot intentionally, ? Did you shoot someone or did you get shot, and was it intentional?
I think best case scenario is what they're talking about is, did you negligently discharge or did you unintentionally shoot someone? And speaking as a Redditor, I love my people on Reddit, most of them.
I'm sure they
sometimes.
love you too.
Yeah. They're my biggest fan. I think what they're speaking to here, again, not having seen this thread or anything of the sort and just learning about it right now.
It's not, I don't even see anything on a thread here. It's just a list.
Okay. So. I think what they're talking about is, if you do tell the police, look, I unintentionally discharged my firearm, that's going to put you in the hole, so to speak, with cops, because even if you were objectively privileged to use that reasonable force, which could include deadly force, the simple fact that you negligently discharged into someone and you told the cops that, at a minimum, it's not a good look.
You can still get in trouble for being negligent.
Negligent, so, but if you're effectively negligent, let's call it legally negligent, there's a difference between a negligent discharge and being criminally negligent, right? So you could be negligent, but it's not a crime. So that would be an example of what I'm talking about right there, where if someone's trying to kill me and I don't intend to pull the trigger, but for whatever reason I pull the trigger, I may have negligently discharged into that individual. That doesn't mean it's a crime. That's a two-step analysis, because if I was, regardless, privileged to use deadly force against that person, then that's fine. Criminal negligence, which generally deals with concepts of gross negligence that can reasonably or foreseeably cause death or great bodily harm or some other grievous injury, right? That's where you get into, okay, problems. The one snafu with this is the fact that depending upon where you are, you do have to make sure that you're familiar with your state's self-defense laws, because sometimes I have heard of states that are out there, I can't cite any examples off the top of my head, this wasn't a research discussion, where if the prosecutor alleges negligence, you may not be able to raise self-defense against it.
Okay.
So that would, maybe that's the thrust of that question, but I think we kind of beat that one up.
Well, number 5 is did not kill intentionally. I don't know how this applies. Does that mean, oh, I just shot him in the leg, so that makes it legal self-defense? That's not true.
So my charitable read on that would be that you are not telling them, yeah, I wanted to kill him.
Okay.
Rather, we're pivoting this into a discussion of, look, you shoot to stop the threat. That's what I was doing here.
And I'm so glad that you have a charitable read on this, because as I go down this list, I just get more and more frustrated. So number 6, only defense against physical injury or death. So your use of deadly force, I assume this to read, was your only defense against physical injury or death. We're getting in the area of preclusion again, was it?
Yeah, I think we're talking about issues of preclusion. So for instance, there was no opportunity to flee or retreat if you have a state that obligates that. There was no lesser force that could have worked. You know, just again, subject to check your local listings. It seems to speak to issues of preclusion.
Okay. Number 7, no prior ill will, premeditation, or intent to confront. If you had no prior ill will, no premeditation, and no intent to confront, then your use of deadly force is legal, or is that just one item on the list that people are going to ask about?
Yes, this is an odd list, but my guess is that really kind of gets back to the provocation issue. So for instance, if you have a love triangle, right? And this comes to mind because I've seen cases like this, and you have 2 people who are going to duke it out over the third person, and you know they have ill will against each other. That does not preclude the fact that if they're in an argument and someone pulls out a knife to stab the other person, and those are the only facts, right?
Yep.
So we're not talking about they were acting in self-defense when they pulled out the knife. Nope, just it's my hypothetical. I can do what I want. That person's the bad guy. Yeah, no, just because I've got ill will against the guy who's about to stab me doesn't mean I'm disallowed from protecting myself. So I'm going to charitably say that gets back to provocation issues.
And now number 8, no alternative but to use deadly force. That sounds very similar to some of those above.
Preclusion issue.
Yep. Number 9, no alternative to avoid. And number 10, no opportunity or requirement to safely retreat.
Preclusion.
Yeah.
And preclusion, just so what we're talking about is the fact that you're precluded from an alternative measure other than using deadly force. So for instance, if someone's trying to stab you, but that person is handicapped in a wheelchair and that wheelchair is immobilized, and you happen to be standing next to them, you can absolutely create the argument or exist within the argument of, yeah, I took out my gun because they were trying to stab me, so I shot him. But the prosecutor is going to basically speak to issues of preclusion of why didn't you just take 2 steps back?
Yeah.
And to be fair, both sides have their arguments there, okay? I'm not saying that one person has necessarily a decisive edge, because I can see that case going either way. The defendant now, the shooter who defended themselves against the person in the wheelchair who's trying to stab him, absolutely. Someone's trying to stab me with a knife. Someone's trying to interfere with my blood circulating. That's a problem. That's a deadly threat. But the prosecutor is also going to be able to speak to, look, was this a reasonable use of force? And again, a lot of that's going to depend upon the specific nature of the laws in your specific state, the specific nature of prosecutors, judges, and juries, and of course, the strength of your attorney.
Yeah, and And that's kind of what I'm getting at as we go down through this thing. Number 11, Castle Doctrine, is your home involved? That could be, and we have done dozens of videos discussing that. And then number 12, in big bold letters on this list, compliant with state law for deadly force.
We could have led with that.
Yeah,
and it could have been a
Yeah.
one item list at that point.
Are you following your state laws with deadly force? And the point of this, and there's some footnotes that were added down here, 5 elements for justified use of deadly force: proportionality, innocence, reasonableness, avoidance, and imminence. Masada Yube's AOJ triangle, the ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. All of these sorts of things. Well, the reason I brought this up, and we are not giving people legal advice. We're not doing that on this channel. But we do give good, solid information. And the 12 items on this list need much more explanation. You can't just go down this list and say, oh yeah, this, yeah, I'm okay to shoot. I don't think that's how people should do this. And I'm going to plug this USCCA YouTube channel that our information is better than the stuff that we're getting elsewhere. And some of the stuff that's put out here is just making things more confusing. And this 12-step process for legality checklist, wow. I'm going to check your local listings and consult an attorney before you go down this road.
I think it could have been at a minimum better structured as, let's take out number 11, which I think was like follow your, or was that number 12?
12 was
just follow the law.
Yeah, follow the law.
Follow the law, okay. Because I mean, again, that's like the one item list at that point. If we're going to go there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you kick 11. I think if you want to keep this in the abstract, you come up with that. Here are the principles of self-defense, and you talk about preclusion, and you talk about imminence, and all that kind of stuff. And then I think you could nest those questions within each one of those categories of giving examples to provoke the reader to think about stuff. But yeah, as a list, I don't know where that came from. I learned as we're filming this that this apparently came from Reddit. It doesn't terribly surprise me that it came from Reddit. There's great stuff on Reddit. There's some less than great stuff on Reddit. It's the internet, right?
Yeah, it's out there. When I went through the police academy, the justification for the use of deadly force was that you may use deadly force against any action that has caused or imminently threatens to cause death or great bodily harm to you or another person or persons. Done. Then let the lawyers figure it out, because if you can say it in one sentence like that, every single incident is going to be different. Everyone is going to be unique, and the totality of the circumstance is going to bring to bear all of the elements on whether or not you could, should, what is imminent. All of those sorts of things are going to come up.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I do appreciate when people try to capture information, ideas, and lists for people. This was probably just not the finest attempt I've seen.
Yeah, clarity. The old journalism axiom: accuracy, brevity, and clarity. I see none of that here. But thank you for bringing your insight and helping to clear this up. I truly appreciate it. I judge, as going through this, like we said at the beginning, Tom Grieve versus Reddit, Tom Grieve wins.
Well, and let this also go on the record, the time that you said that I had brevity.
Yeah, that's right. It does happen occasionally. Now, Tom, having beat this dead horse to death, as Duke Twomey would say, and if anybody gets that Duke Twomey reference, I'll give you a special prize. What checklist would you give people rather than going to Reddit to get a 12-point, really obscure, bizarre, meandering checklist? What checklist would you give people?
I would start with ability. So what's somebody's ability to do something? So we're talking about, most obviously, are they in possession or can they readily gain possession of any weapons? We're obviously talking about specifically deadly weapons. We're talking about the relative disparity, if any exists, as far as size, levels of aggression, the training that the parties may have. Basically, does somebody have the ability to actually inflict serious, great bodily harm or death on another person? That's ability.
Okay.
So number 2, we've got opportunity. So if somebody has the ability to inflict death or great bodily harm on you, what's their opportunity to do so? So this is a measure of, are there physical barriers between you and them? What's the reactionary gaps? In other words, are they 100 yards away and they only have an edged weapon, as an example, right? This loosely falls under the category of opportunity. What's their opportunity to enact that ability against you?
Okay. And is that it? You got one more on your list?
One more.
One more.
And that goes to principles of preclusion. So principles of preclusion basically are, look, number one, and most obviously, if you're in a state that has some sort of duty to retreat or something like that, did you reasonably exhaust any of those legal duties that may be encumbering you? Number two, even if you don't have any of those legal duties, a prosecutor, judge, and a jury is certainly going to be reasonably asking, in most circumstances, I realize that sometimes there's exceptions, but in most circumstances, were there lesser alternatives that were available before immediately jumping to deadly force?
And I want to make it clear that you don't have to try the lesser alternatives. You just have to reasonably consider them in that 2.5 seconds that you have to make your decision.
Or that super split second, wherever else the case may be, right? So this is not a moment where obviously you're going to be able to pause, introspect, center yourself, and all this other kind of stuff, right? This is something that, look, it was not reasonable that I could disengage because of reasons X, Y, Z. And again, there's obviously laws like Standard Ground and Castle Doctrine that may or may not shift some of that analysis, possibly even take it off the table. But it doesn't change the fact that there are also laws that can put those discussions back on the table, even if you are in a Castle Doctrine jurisdiction. Take, for instance, the fact that Castle Doctrine, if it applies, if it attaches, will generally create a presumption in your favor that you are in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. But anytime you hear that P word, there's an R word that follows it. That's rebuttable. So the prosecutor could introduce evidence of, yeah, the invader broke into your home, and in that particular moment when you awoke to find them in your bedroom, you would have been lawful to shoot them right then and there. When you were not lawful is you went for the gun, he went for the door to run out, then you shot him. That would be kind of a classic example of, well, look, you know, you went from in a timeline of red where it's illegal to shoot, suddenly he's in your house, you've got green, but the moment that that guy turns to run away, green turns back to red where it's now a crime to shoot. And did you shoot during green or did you shoot during red?
Yeah, absolutely. So to wrap this all up, and I won't say tidy because none of this was tidy, but to put a bow on it, we can distill those 12 points down to ability, opportunity, and preclusion, and then every situation's unique, and we're going the prosecutor and the defense attorney are going to ask all those other questions. The thing you in that moment, does the person have ability? Do they have opportunity? And is there anything else you could have done?
Absolutely, and that's really what it's going to come down to.
Well, thanks again, Tom. Always love your insight, and no, we're not just picking on the people on Reddit, but we just happen to this time. So, folks, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and we have that gun giveaway going on still. So click the link in the description down below to see which brand new gun you could win, and remember, this ends really soon.